So let's take a few minutes to talk about boundaries. My experience is that we do a really great job setting up boundaries for our special needs kids when it comes to other people. We don't let other people walk all over our special needs kids. We don't let people treat them wrong. We don't let them talk to them in a negative way. We don't let them harass them. We don't allow it. Even with extended family, I find that when you've got a profoundly autistic kid, for example, like I do, you tend to find it much easier to set up a boundary for other people and say, nope, you're not crossing this line. I'm protecting my own. You're going to cause damage. Not happening. Not going here. Right? So that's awesome. And that is great. And I fully encourage you to keep doing that. But there came a time where I learned something from my husband. My husband is an absolutely amazing, involved dad who takes my son to do all sorts of things. He is very involved. He does not shy away from doing the tough things with my son. And my husband set up some boundaries that shocked me a bit, and I was uneasy with them, and I thought it was not okay. Here we are years later, and I am realizing that it was perfect for him to do these things. So he set up boundaries surrounding my son and what he would allow my son to do and not do in behavior, in how he was treating other people, in telling him no. I knew my son was struggling, and it was so hard. Life was so freaking hard for this poor kid. And so I just wanted to help him any way I could. So when I thought he might have wanted something to eat, I would just let him have something to eat and something to eat and something to eat. And if he kept getting out of bed and wanting more to drink or all of these things, I would just give in and let him do it, let him do it, let him do it. Now, I would never do that with any of my other kids, but I was doing that with my autistic son because I felt so bad for his struggles. My husband stepped up and would say, no more drinks, no more food. It's time for bed. Boom, done. And I was terrified of meltdowns. I was terrified of all sorts of things, but that's a boundary. That was a boundary that my husband put up to say, no more. We are done. Kitchen is closed. Whatever, language you want to use for that. And it got me thinking, I'm like, wow, maybe that's not such a bad thing. Maybe my heart, afraid of triggering a meltdown, my heart afraid of making life even more difficult for him when everything was such a struggle already. Maybe it wasn't unreasonable for me to require that of him, to require him to have a little bit of discomfort and a little bit of boundary to where, no, sorry, dude, not happening. Kitchen is closed. You do that with your neurotypical kids, right? You would sit there and say, no, dude, you already had snack. It is time for bed. We did the story thing. You had your bath. It is time to get in your bed and be done for the night. And we would enforce that. And we would think as good parents, we're going to do this. Then your autistic kid comes along and they struggle so much. And you're like, well, maybe. But maybe what we need is a little more firmness for them in certain situations. You are the only one that can know what that situation is. You are the only one that can determine where that boundary needs to be. But let me tell you a story. And this hit hard. For a very long time, when I had multiple children still at home, because we don't have all of them at home anymore. My autistic kid is my middle child, and he is 20. So he's got two older siblings that are out of the house, and his 18-year-old sister is on her way out, right? So when they were all growing up together, We all walked around on eggshells. No, 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 don't do that, because you're going to trigger Sebastian. You're going to trigger him. He might have a meltdown and then somebody's going to get hurt. I walked around in fear for my family, afraid that if my kids were kids and were loud, or if siblings bickered or whatever, that it was going to trigger a meltdown. So we walked on eggshells, and my boundaries were around the other kids and not my autistic son. I have since corrected that with his youngest little brother. Now, his youngest little brother, if he does something and he needs to be reprimanded, and my autistic son will let us know, I don't like that tone, he will come up and he will pinch me. He will get aggressive with me, not overly, but he will get aggressive with me to let me know he is not comfortable with that tone of voice that I use. He is not comfortable being around when somebody is getting reprimanded. But I have to sit back and say, oh, well, I'm sorry that makes you uncomfortable, but your brother did something that he needs consequences for, and he is getting reprimanded for it. And that's just the way it is. Now, I'm not talking yelling and screaming. I am talking about that firm tone of voice that you use when you tell your child that you've told, okay, I told you to put your clothes away. They're still on the table. That needs to be handled right now before you go outside to play. I'm talking about that tone of voice would set my autistic son off. So I didn't even use that tone of voice with my other kids. I would whisper to them and I would say, you need to obey. We're going to have a meltdown. Wow. Putting that sort of a boundary on everybody else instead of on my autistic son where it belonged. That was awful. And the trauma that was caused is not good. And I realize that now. And as a parent, we need to correct this situation, and we need to recognize when it is okay for your special needs kid to feel a little bit uncomfortable about things, because that's life, and it's not fair to everybody else to have boundaries placed on them and none on your special needs child. That's not realistic. That is not helpful for anybody involved. Can I tell you now, when my son is told, nope, we're all done eating, he might be a little annoyed about it. He may bang something on the counter. He may pick up the chips that he has that his father had given him earlier, and he decided he didn't want chips for his snack. He wanted something out, and he may throw them in his bedroom. But that's it. He realizes when dad says no more snacks, there's no more snacks. That's a boundary. So it's not wrong to have boundaries for your special needs kid, even if it makes them uncomfortable, even if it triggers them a little bit. Every kid is going to have a different level of what they can handle, but every kid needs to be pushed and stretched in order for them to grow to their ability in the way that they can handle. As fast or slow as that is for that kid. And only you can decide what that looks like. But don't make the same mistakes that I did. Take a good look and make sure that you are not parenting in a way that you are just parenting out of fear because you don't want the fallout that will come with it. This isn't for the weak. This is for the strong. And if you are going to do best by your kid, it's going to be hard.